Welcome to Slow News Day Live. My name is Steve Poikinen. I'm here in lockdown Boulder Creek, California. Before I start really getting into the show today, I do want to apologize. I thought I was going to be interviewing David McBride today at 4. It turns out that I can't tell time and ended up scheduling it for like 4 o'clock in the morning my time. So that's obviously not going to happen. I will be interviewing him Sunday afternoon. So my bad. And let's move on. I am joined this evening by my good friend Jason Carney. Jason, how are you, man?
I am doing. It's been a long day.
Yeah.
Day number 6,432 of quarantine.
Man, it really does seem like it. So you have been one of the people that were not like religiously addicted to Bernie Sanders, but wanted him to become the next president and thought that there was a glimmer of hope or three involved in that campaign. And this morning, what happened?
Let me walk it back a little bit. After Super Tuesday, I was going to give till the next Super Tuesday, which, if you remember, was the Ohio, Illinois, that those 5 or 6 states that were supposed to vote. And I was going to see how it was going to play out after the South Carolina situation, then leading into the Super Tuesday situation, in which, oddly enough, Pete Buttigieg, who was second or third when it came to delegates, decided to drop out after South Carolina. Amy Klobuchar, who was fourth, I believe, decided to drop out in South Carolina. They had more delegates because of more second and third place finishes, and Buttigieg technically won Iowa, not by popular vote, but by whatever system they got going. They were both above Biden because Biden, I think his best finish was fourth, if I'm not mistaken, in the first 3 contests.
I believe they sell the Iowa primary by flipping roosters. And then, like, whoever catches the rooster, they've got to hold it up to another rooster, and then they have a cockfight, and whoever like the handler is that bleeds out first, that's the candidate that loses.
You're talking about my vacation in Tijuana there.
Sophisticated electoral process in the state of Iowa.
Right. But
sorry,
go ahead. That's when I got after seeing that situation pop up, I thought that was odd enough. And then when South Carolina came up, I wasn't shocked. It's a red state. It'll never go Democratic. Doesn't matter who's running. And they're going to have a tendency to go for the more conservative candidate. So I wasn't shocked by South Carolina. What I was shocked was everything after the fact. Again, the dropping out of the other candidates to consolidate behind the 4th or 5th place finisher. That was really weird. And when you talk about the course of history. And then moving on, I just saw the contest rolling over. Americans have this horrible thing where they vote or they think they're supporting the winner. That's all they do. It's not policy. It's not their actual enjoyment of the person. It's, oh, they won South Carolina and they won a majority of the Super Tuesday state. So that must mean they're a winner. I want to back a winner. I don't want to be seen as backing the loser, ergo. And it continued on. I told all my followers, all 6 of them on the multiple platforms that I have, if you've been paying attention, then you've noticed that I've pivoted away from direct support of Bernie Sanders toward direct support of GND, Green New Deal, Medicare for All, and other policies. I was getting specific more to the movement as opposed to a person, because I could have been doom and gloom about 3 weeks ago and started saying the end is nigh. And it didn't have to be. That was the worst part. But you had a feeling with the lack of creativity coming from the campaign and from the candidate itself. It wasn't. This was inevitable, but it didn't need to be. And so it's been a pivot for me for like the last 2 or 3 weeks. I've kind of accepted life as is and realized that Sanders is not exactly the candidate we need him to be for. We needed a more aggressive campaign and a more aggressive candidate. We needed to find ways to take out the MSM narratives that they were just constantly beating into people's heads. We needed to figure out a lot of different aspects, and we didn't get it quite right this time around. We did, oddly enough, we did better, I believe, in the previous election than we did this one, especially with white, uneducated, white non-college voters. We really dropped hardcore with them this go around. it sets up a battle of two rapists, and I think that's kind of almost apropos of the duopoly, the Republican and Democrat parties, is that you're going to support one of two rapists if you vote for one or two of those parties. Those parties have been raping and pillaging for the last 200 years. Why not have candidates that are alleged rapists? I mean, it's almost poetic.
So I'm going to tell you why you're wrong.
Which one?
and on the surface, you know, if you were to just let's say we were, you know, stepping back and looking at the election and how it went down, that is an excellent synopsis of what occurred. But what occurred in reality is we don't have free and fair elections. We don't have candidates who run as Democrats that are there to A, reform the party, B, take over or transform the party, or C, even help the party defeat Donald Trump. What the Democrats are, what the DNC is, according to them and their own attorney, is a private organization that can handpick their candidates in smoke film back rooms, and elections are for fundraising purposes. And there's technically no such thing as a Democrat. That's what we know. And we've known that for at least 4 years now. And yet, millions of people threw $250 million at Bernie Sanders just this time. Like, he's done fundraising. He's been done fundraising for about a month now. So through February, through $250 million at a campaign and a candidate who wasn't there to win, who wasn't there to, you know, disrupt, transform, take on, or in any other way, shape, or form, shake things up, but to make sure that people registered Democrat, voted in these primaries, and dedicated 4 years to believing in the inevitability of a guy who had just told them to vote for Hillary Clinton. And when you don't have a legitimate system, when you don't have free and fair elections, and when you have one party masquerading as two, the people who run inside that party aren't there to benefit working people. They're not there to pass progressive reforms or legislations. They're there to take your fucking money. They're there to take your agency. They're there to remove they're there to remove your opinion from the political process. So if we're looking at it as a breakdown of like how the election went according to the papers, yes, absolutely, that's exactly what happened. It is. But the shit end of the stick is that's not what happened. What happened is Bernie fucking sheepdogged a whole bunch of people, took a fuck ton of money, and is going to roll it into the DNC so that they can go pay consultants all the way to losing to Donald Trump again.
I would love to argue with you on this, but as you know, for years, I've been one of the few on the actual left, and yeah, I call it the actual left, that has still said democracy is a possibility when it comes to the current American. I said it was a distant possibility, but it was still a possibility. And after South Carolina, I really regretted ever having that position. After that point, I think you'll see an uptick when I would do like hashtag general strike, and I would start talking more toward things that we need to do and things that we need to pay attention to. Like I would retweet you and others about Assange. I would retweet you and others about general strike. I even started retweeting the Communist Party. So, I mean, it was one of those things where I pivoted from saying, okay, we could do this with peaceful ballot measures. And then I thought to myself, I promote 1964's ballot, or the bullet or the ballot by Malcolm X. And then I was like, well, when you take away the inevitability or the opportunity of the ballot, you lead the population to the bullet. And it's one of those things where it's degrees. General strike is the next obvious step. Especially if we believe in the 12 years that this earth has before it goes beyond livable, before it starts to degrade so much that our children or our children's children will have an unsustainable environment. If we really and there's no reason why we wouldn't believe that from the majority of our scientific community, if not 99.8% of them, then we can't wait another 4 years. Even if Biden, let's say Biden wins, we can't wait to go and waste our time with the Democratic primary to dick around again and hope for the best and get the worst. At this point, the left and progressives have to really just bite down on their lip, go out to Home Depot, go out to Lowe's, and go buy themselves a fluorescent yellow vest and refuse to do anything to keep this economy in this country going until certain demands are met, such as Green New Deal, such as Medicare for All, such as whatever the long list of issues that we have that I won't go through on here because your audience is educated enough to know what the left is fighting for. But at the end of the day, it stopped being about democracy. Now it's about action. And if you notice, I said general strike, so nobody can come back at me and saying I was going for violence. General strike, shutting down the economy, shutting down the country doesn't need to be violent. Civil disobedience doesn't need to be violent. If it gets to that point, I'm not encouraging that, but at this juncture, we need to go step by step and evolve because we don't have 4 more years to wait and dick around to play with the duopoly and hope for something that we're not going to get because reality is something polar opposite.
Well, let me tell you what's happening right now, though, that I'm seeing, and that's a lot of people who are talking about the Green Party and Howie Hopkins and shit like that.
Right.
And I'm going to get to that rant, but to go back to what you were just saying, and Josh, if you could pull the tweet up here real quick. This morning, the very first thing that I had to say about this was imagine if instead of feeding themselves on their own fan fiction and hope porn, lefty content creators had spent the last few years talking to their audiences about the national security state, Julian Assange, and general strikes. And the amount of energy that went into 4 years of abject failure in the progressive movement is definitely not going to be regained by people going, I know, I'm going to throw my support behind another 70-year-old guy who pushes Russiagate and has a shitty fucking way of thinking about press freedom and Julian Assange. And that guy has even less of a chance of winning in a rigged system. And that's going to solve it.
Well, my thing is also not just putting it on Bernie Sanders. For being honest, his campaign was run by a lot of incompetence, a lot of scared people that were already Democratic operatives, that were those exact people, the people that are paid for their comments on how things should happen, how things should run. Bernie deserves equal credit, but he also had a very incompetent campaign that was guiding him through the process.
Hold on. That he wasn't running a legitimate campaign, Jason.
Right.
It should have been fucking Helen Beniski calls it raising a forest of red flags. And I love that imagery, by the way. But I mean, the fact that Faiz Shakir and Ro Khanna were the people that he was trusting, that should have told everyone in the progressive movement, this guy's full of shit, and I just wasted 3.5 years of believing in this motherfucker after being shown who he was in 2016 when he fucking backed Hillary Clinton, did 40 events for her, and fucking never once said Julian Assange's name out loud. Never once talked about election integrity. Never once talked about fucking the national security state. Like, all of these things should have been giant fucking buzzers going off in people's heads.
Well, you'd be the first person to back me up on this. I brought up that issue. I've written to the campaign. I've tried to get in touch with contacts to get that question directly to the senator, to bypass the wall that he had around him, to bring up things about Assange, to bring up about election integrity, to bring up things like Venezuela, and not rooted on and not support overthrowing a democratically elected government. I'm a Marxist first, and let me say this, because as you said, I'm not religious about Bernie Sanders. I would like to think a good portion of us We're more about the movement toward socialism and using this as a mode of transportation to get to that point. This country has been fed dogma about socialism for so long. People don't even know what socialism is. They think a Democrat is a fucking socialist when they believe in capitalism. Right off the bat, I have an issue with that. When Bernie Sanders believes in reforming capitalism to save capitalism, there's no saving capitalism. Capitalism is a decrepit cancer that preys upon the entire populace, the human population. So when we don't even know the difference in that, it's a slow trudge to get people educated on ideology, let alone getting behind policy.
People are learning the hard way right fucking now, though.
I won't argue that.
We're on, we're on soft martial law. We're watching the economy collapse when we can tear ourselves away from fucking Netflix.
But when that $1,200 check should go real far, shouldn't it?
Oh yeah, yeah.
The $1,200 loan against yourself, next year's returns, that should go real far.
Yeah, I mean, there's been plenty of times where I've had to get a little bit of coin fronted to me, but I've never been able to front my own money to me. This is a fucking new one. It is. It's a neat trick. I guess banks do it all the time,
right?
But that's because they're criminal organizations, and I'm just a guy. I don't,
No, but that's the thing at the end of the day, though, with Bernie supporters, and it's something I've been trying to pump into people's heads who are Bernie supporters for the last 3 weeks. It's never been about Bernie Sanders or AOC or Ilhan Omar or anybody who's currently in office. There isn't one person. This is a movement to move us towards something in which we take power back from the oligarchy, from the plutocracy, from the wealthy, from corporate America, however you want to phrase it. That this is what the movement is. It's leading us toward an inevitable conclusion in which we clash with a small amount of people that have way entirely too much power, too much money, and too much influence. That's what I wanted to focus on, not the fact that it was a 78-year-old white guy from Vermont or anybody from New York or anybody from Minnesota or one person. It's never been about one person. And that's what I've been trying to reinforce for the last 3 weeks. It's about the ideology. It's about moving to an actual left, to distance ourselves from the center, the Democrats, the Blairites, however you want to call them, the Clintonians. It's been about that and not Bernie Sanders. And that's from my position. Maybe that's a lack of cult of personality effect on me, but that's what I've been trying to do.
Yeah, no, I mean, that's why I still fucks with you, homie. Like, I mean, you weren't the guy to just fucking caper around at the robes of the chosen one. Like that wasn't what you were in it for.
We never have been. That's not our thing.
I gotta say this because it just happened, or maybe it's still happening. I don't know. But like for the last 3 weeks, Jimmy Dore has been just going ape shit. I'm done with these feckless fucking losers. And by the way, here's Nick Branagh. That just happened. Like, Jimmy, I'm done with feckless fucking losers is like, oh, and please welcome Nick Branagh back to the show. Because, the movement for a people's party, and you were a part of these like early conversations. I don't know if the people in the chat know this or not, but almost 5 years ago now, when we started the Progressive Independent Party, and eventually got Tim Canova to run as a progressive independent in 2018, by the way. Like, we've already accomplished more with the defunct party than Nick Branagh has with the movement for a people's party. This shit happened. Nick was in, he was in there and like trying to talk about merging PIP and the movement for a people's party and all this shit. And I wrote a fucking platform that Nick immediately stole and adopted and like basically took out of Eric L. Bloss's hands in Chicago at the Convergence conference. And he hasn't done shit. Like, he's done less than shit. He's gotten himself on a couple of shows. He's said some nice things about Sunrise Movement, a fucking predatory capitalist fucking NGO funded organization. Neat. Neat. But like, look, the reason I'm saying all of this is because if somebody's going to watch the show and they're thinking in their head, oh, maybe I'll go fuck around with the movement for a people party. they've had all this time and energy, and what they did was turn it into a de facto Bernie campaign.
Well, that's the thing. If you're going to fuck around with any type of new party or any new party to get you excited, my personal pick, and I would suggest you look it up on your own. Like I said, a very smart audience, so I don't feel like I have to stress that too much. Is the Socialist Equality Party (SEP). I'm a fan of it because of my particular strain of Marxism. That's something if you're interested in trying to bring up from the ground up. That it's not democratic socialism; it's legit Marxism. It's of the Trotsky vein, and I don't want to hear any Stalinists come in here and throw a shit show. It isn't about that. It's about actually promoting a party that is for the people. Check that out. I wouldn't guide anybody towards Sunrise. I've gotten overtures from a couple of different parties since I've been more vocal about not having any involvement with the party. I feel like a free agent that's being courted by a bunch of things that aren't going to be successful. Some parties, some parties I didn't even hear of. It's one of those things at the end of the day that we need to research, and we need a campaign that runs people in local elections and state elections and in Congress, because it doesn't matter who wins the presidency. I can't believe I have to stress this to people. Even if Bernie Sanders won, how many policies do you think outside of executive orders would he have been able to push through with this Senate and this Congress?
Just out of curiosity. No political will, and he gave up on Medicare for all in an email to his supporters last week.
Yeah.
So the idea that he would govern any differently than he campaigned, throwing his supporters under the bus all the way, coddling the establishment all the way.
But here's the thing.
If you think he would govern differently, you're fucking smoking better shit than me. And this is 92% activated live resin, motherfucker.
He would have been a leg up on Biden or Trump. Let's be real on that front. He would have been a leg up. I'm not saying infinitely better godlike superpowers. I'm saying he would have been a leg up on those two. But what it really boils down to at the end of the day is you can't trust any campaign that gets its money through Act Blue. I mean, right off the bat, that should, as we talk about red flags, if you are going through the donation process and, man, this looks amazing, this looks awesome, this looks fantastic. Oh, Act Blue? Oh, my bad. It's one of those things. We have to stop getting behind an individual and do the cult of personality thing, thinking somebody's going to save us. There's not a single person out there that's going to save us. It's going to be us who saves us. We have to look at the situation and say, holy shit, this isn't right anymore. I need to change this. How best can I change this? I want to talk to people in my community. I want to talk to people online. I want to talk to people and figure out how we can come together and actually make progress. Steve's brought up a lot of great points in previous shows. I'm on Twitter all the time talking about it. And what it boils down to right now, if you really believe in the timeline that we have from an environmental standpoint, if you believe that fascism is not coming, it's not going to be here soon, that it's soft fascism already before we go hardcore authoritarian Mussolini Hitler style. If you believe in these things and you see these facts that are right there in front of you, you're going to look at a yellow vest and you're going to look at a general strike, regardless of what industry you're involved with. I don't care if you're in porn, you're in trucking, janitorial, whether you're some type of middle management at Walmart. I don't care where you're at in this world.
I'm in janitorial porn.
I'm just trying to cover a wide cross section here. But no, at the end of the day, if you want to make something happen, it's not going to happen with the ballot. There's some candidates that I advocate for, and I'm proud to. It's all over my Twitter. I don't get behind too many candidates too often. I feel like you kind of lose the power of endorsement if you support every goddamn candidate. I support a couple, and it's because I vetted them and I believe in them. And it's on my Twitter at whatever point at your leisure. But the key thing is the Green Party has had 30, 40 years to turn into members of Congress, to turn into members of the Senate, to turn into governors in different states.
47 years, I believe. It was 73 or 74.
They've had a long freaking time, and Nader was the closest thing to making people... They didn't even capitalize off Nader, which was a huge issue to me. If you couldn't capitalize and turn that into state legislatures and governorships, then how do I have any faith in you every 4 years so that you can garner 4 to 5% of the vote, keep showing up on balance and doing absolutely dick all?
I don't often make predictions, but if I was inclined to do so, I would say that this would be the year that they let the Green Party get to 5% of the vote and get their matching federal funds, because that way you keep enough people complacent and you keep enough people strung out on that hope porn to go through another fucking 4 years of out and out totalitarian fascism. We've got drones flying over fucking Central Park right now telling people maintain social distancing. This is for your safety. Thank you for your cooperation.
Right.
We've got the National Guard rolling into fucking place. They have been there for fucking 2 months now at this point. It's goddamn April 8th. The National Guard was activated January 29th. Jason Burmis has done a bunch of videos on them staging in New Rochelle,
Right.
outside of New York City. I mean, we're already at fascism, and it's going to fail us. All of our previous isms have failed us. There isn't an ism that is going to save us from what we are already living in. What we are living in is a dire need for collective fucking ascension. The only possible way we can do that is by refuting the process, by fucking poll strikes, voter strikes, rent strikes, debt strikes, general strikes. Stop the fucking machine from grinding. Fucking put a halt to that shit, and do not leave until you get at least free and fair elections. At least.
But then
Do not leave until you've got a fucking protected First Amendment. Without the free flow of information, people can't form their own fucking ideas. They have to have somebody else's ideas. That's not a fucking liberated society.
And there needs to be term limits on the Supreme Court, because none of that matters, what you just said, unless we have a Supreme Court that actually goes by the intent and the will of each and every individual amendment. I could read the First Amendment one way, and Clarence Thomas could read it another. Unfortunately, there's a 5-4 thing there. They're for life, and it's going to ruin the next 20 or 30 years of our lives, because the conservative makeup of this Congress and the very center, which is called the left, the very center that it's battling against, it's 5-4 for the right wing in that respect. But here's the thing with you say no isms, and I totally get that. I'm with you to a certain extent, but I am a proponent in socialism, because socialism has been the one thing to battle back fascism in this world. Not the United States. It was the USSR that won World War II. Let's be real. And if not World War I, if not for Russia removing itself and going through the Red Revolution and things of that nature, World War II would have been an absolute mess. Socialists have been the only people who can combat anybody on the far right. And that's been a historical stance, and that's my position as a socialist. I won't ditch the isms thing, because I am of that particular cult strain. I have been since I was younger. I do believe in Marxism in action. I do believe it's not perfect, that we constantly need to strive to make it better, because, well, as in any ideology, there's different things for different people. But at the end of the day, if we're talking just short-term things, when you talk about grinding the system to a halt, to ensure that the Constitution actually does what it says, we need to start going after the Supreme Court and limit to 4-year terms, 5-year terms, something like that, because the current makeup and the way that the current court will interpret law and the Constitution is not a benefit for you and I. It's a benefit for Walmart and corporate America, Fortune 500 companies, or the wealthy. So, I mean, look at Wisconsin.
Conservative argument about the Supreme Court. Every single time. We can't let these unelected judges sit with lifetime appointments. That used to be a political talking point.
It's been a talking point of mine for years. I mean, I've been one of the rare few people that are out there still screaming for it. It wouldn't have mattered if Gorsuch, or whatever the hell his name was, actually made the court. It would have been just as bad. It's a crapshoot. There are some who are obvious, Justice Sotomayor, RBG, and others like that are obviously of their particular political bent. But if you remember Kavanaugh and Justice Roberts and any other member of that court, they said that politics stops at the entranceway of the Supreme Court. It's about law, and politics won't play a part in any of this. Yet, with Wisconsin during the middle of a pandemic, the Supreme Court of the United States of America sided with the GOP of Wisconsin to force the vote to happen during an epidemic in which we have people who are asymptomatic, which means they have no outward signs of it. 6 feet of space is great, but what if somebody can't or either afford or get their hands on a mask? That's what I'm talking about. And that's what I'm getting to is that they're using politics, and this literally put lives in danger in Wisconsin for a fucking joke of an election that is really irrelevant in the grand scheme of things. You put lives on the line for some nonsense. And then on top of that, you shut down, I think it was 180 polling areas in the state. It's like, you got to be out of your goddamn mind. You're having people be forced to be even more people in an area. 6 feet of distance is only so much when there's hundreds of thousands of people trying to do their civic duty by voting. The Supreme Court needs to change. That is the biggest thing that I'm jumping all over. And then on top of that, we need a leftist Congress, because it doesn't matter who wins the presidency. That doesn't matter because they can't get anything through unless they have a leftist, not a Democrat, not a liberal Republican, not any of that other nonsense, a leftist Congress and a Senate to get things done and to fight back fascism.
The system as designed, from signing the fucking Constitution to now, was never designed for me or you or the vast majority of the people in the country. So the idea that this system can work if only we do it with these people in it, to me at least, it is a fallacy. You can't take a system that was broken by design and put good people, let alone the people who normally run for office, into it and expect anything other than fucking corrupt and broken legislation by corrupted and fucking broken actors. You can't. As important as the Supreme Court is, they're way down the list compared to the global intelligence state, the relationship that our intelligence agency has with Israel's intelligence agency, or the United Kingdom's intelligence agency, any of the Five Eyes intelligence agencies. We don't have governments that run intelligence agencies. We have intelligence agencies that run governments. And to think that the Supreme Court is going to have a say in what they do and how they govern, it is far-fetched in my opinion. Now, it will directly impact the lives of peons, yes, to a degree, but if we're looking at what needs to change is the entire fucking system, which we've allowed ourselves to be held hostage under.
And I don't disagree with you on any front. We differ on the way to do it. I look at it as a macro versus micro. If we can't get our own house in order, how in the hell are we going to demand that the UK get there, or Israel, or Russia, or Saudi Arabia, or China, or anybody else? If we can't get our own shit straight, that's why I say start at a micro level, because you're talking macro level issues that need to be addressed like 10 years ago, but they haven't been. And then Julian Assange is currently being tortured and stuck around people with potentially COVID-19, and he has a history, I believe, of upper respiratory infections or asthma.
He has a chronic lung condition.
Right. So for me, I'm looking at situations like Manning. I'm looking at people like who were with Anonymous a couple of years back. Barrett Brown, I believe, was the name, and several other individuals that were held for really nonsensical reasons. And I'm agreeing with you 500%. You are right about the problem, but I think where we differ is if we can't get our shit together, how do we expect to get the international system, the global system that you're correct about, fixed? Does that make sense?
Yeah, well, I mean, the solution is the same, though. You fucking withhold labor.
Right.
You withhold labor and you make demands. And the demands can't be something as small as, we need leftists in Congress.
No, I get that.
The demands have to be, we get agency. We aren't going to operate under the rule of a fucking small group of unelected sociopaths. We're not.
We'll
And
just, yeah.
the reason that we have unions in the first place is because some people organized and they went to a factory owner and they said, we can negotiate for better wages and better working conditions, or we can drag you out of your house and beat you to death in front of your family.
Yeah. Yeah, but here's the
Which
thing,
one
though.
sounds better?
I totally agree with you, but that's where trade unions come in as well. In America, they have a warped version of what they used to be and what their intent was. Now they're bloated, decrepit, very. The union that I deal with, the ATU, the Amalgamated Transit Union, is a joke. They rubber stamp what corporate says. They don't protect the worker. You could file a grievance because Greyhound hasn't paid you for a very long time and you've already done the work, and yet you don't have any backing from the union. When you go in, you're essentially taking on a corporation by yourself. So for me, I have a different perspective on trade unions. I don't think they're any friends to socialists. I don't think they're any friends to Marxists. I think they have an interest in maintaining the capitalistic order, but they do it in a smarter way that protects the workers. I'll give them that, but I don't see them as a legitimate ally. And with the way they have fallen since Reagan's airport strike breakup, I don't see the American unions doing anything. To touch on your international sense, socialism was at its peak in the early 20th century, and yet they couldn't even get the whole world in line to focus on ending capitalism, and their demands were much less than what we need to do today. Getting everybody internationally on the same page to do a general strike is a beautiful thing. We need to fight for it. But again, it goes back up to the macro level. If we can't get our shit straight at home, how can we fight? Does that make sense? That's my hang up, is if we're so ass backwards at home, it's one of those things. If we get our country to do it.
I get it. I do. I get it. And to a degree that's, I mean, it absolutely has to happen first. What I'm saying though is, like, there's 327 million people here who are being exposed to what it's like to live under martial law because there's a threat of a disease that doesn't impact only the people who are going to become workers and wipes out, because of the way that we run this fucking shithole, poor people and old people and people who are about to become old people. The one thing Andrew Yang was right about is that we're staring automation down the face. So we've got this here pandemic that has the entire planet on lockdown. The entire planet has been given the perfect opportunity to internationally strike.
100% with you. It's getting all those people in the same idea that things can be changed if you're willing to stand up, if you're willing to take on the system. I mean, Hungary alone, I believe, is put through dictatorship-esque right-wing fascist policy during the COVID-19 crisis. Most of the country's authoritarian types, regardless of bend, whether they be fascist or just right-wing, have taken advantage of COVID-19. Here in the United States, you've seen several stories of government overreach, legal overreach, sheriff's counties overreaches, etc. during COVID-19. Totally with you. This is the most opportune time for a strike, but we still have people believing that we have a two-party system and all of this can be cured if you just vote Democrat.
I mean, there's $250 million that went to Bernie Sanders from people who thought if they just fucking threw more money at him and voted harder, that he wouldn't do exactly what it is that he just did. And whether that happened now or at the convention, he was going to drop out and he was going to endorse Joe Biden.
Right.
Like that, it was a foregone conclusion, at least to me, before he even started running again. You run for president because you want to get assassinated by the deep state or you want to become a part of it. And that's all there is to it. And if I believed in the process if we had free and fair elections, Bernie Sanders wouldn't even show up on my list because, there's everyone from Adam Kokesh to Joe Kishore, who I would look at way the hell before that.
Right.
And Joe, I mean, I've had the opportunity to talk to Joe a couple of times. He was just on the Free Assange vigil.
Right.
And I understand and probably appreciate best the Trotskyist version of Marxism because it's the one that goes to a cashless society. But there is that transitionary period that kind of like turned a lot of people into Mensheviks, and that's kind of where I see Joe. To be perfectly honest, like, I like the guy, I do, but I think he's got that authoritarian bent into his politics that makes me recoil just involuntarily.
Right. When they talk about a dictatorship of the proletariat, it doesn't boil down to one person with all the power and one party with all the power. The end goal of communism is to be stateless, is to be without a centralized government, to be taking care of each other in each other's communities, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. If anybody from the left or the right wants to play daddy figure or uncle, insert random name, then that's someone we need to squash. I mean, look at our current present situation as we speak. We have Trump on one side who's just all about that fascism, and then the other guy, both alleged rapists, let me add that, who's for fascism and for corporate America, but I don't know, he's got this Uncle Joe personality. He's that crazy old coot that we see at Thanksgiving, and no, don't pay any attention to him. He says some weird belligerent shit, but he's just Uncle Joe. It's fine. You know what? He smiles nicer than Donald Trump, and he's not quite as loud and obnoxious as Donald Trump, so they're going to get my vote. When we have to break Americans of the idea, first off, of a duopoly. And secondly, we have to fight off the fact that, re-educate that they have the power if they take it into their hands. My problem is we have a country that's not comfortable anymore. We have to work 3 or 4 jobs just to try to pay for a hot dog and your house. Fuck if you get sick. And yet we still have people believing in the two-party process that it will alleviate and cure all these problems. What it boils down to, and I'm 1,000% with you, is solidarity, not only at the U.S. level, but hopefully by some weird, strange twist of fate, the international community. And my belief is the Fourth International, and using socialism and the platform of Trotskyism, in which it talks about international socialism. It doesn't necessarily have to be socialism, but I'm using the guidelines of this to formulate something where the people of this world respond to the fascism and the as you said, no states are there. They're just run by intelligence agencies and your local chapter of Walmart. These are the things that need to be addressed, and I would like to use the Fourth International to get it to be an international yellow vest situation in which people say enough's enough. I won't push a single thing. I won't make another product. I won't give you another IP. I won't do anything until this laundry list of things are addressed in my individual company and internationally. And one of the biggest arguments I would make is that we need to actually define more international law. International law at this point is a joke. It's a couple of laws about not committing genocide. I'm being sarcastic when I say that, but we need more detailed and more ways to hold countries accountable, including the United States, to international decorum, if you will, a baseline of decency. And I firmly believe if we establish more international law as well, it would go to back up the Yellow Vest movement.
Look, we the United States doesn't even recognize the International Criminal.
No.
There's no body that determines, I don't know, punishment for violating international law.
You got the Hague, but that's about it.
Yeah, and my God, dude, like, they'll barely let anyone in there.
Right.
If you look at, like, I don't know, I mean, fuck, dude, look at what's happening to Julian Assange right now. And we've got the UN Working Group on Arbitrary Detention, who's like, hey, this guy's been arbitrarily detained for 8 fucking years.
Right.
And the Special Rapporteur on Torture and Human Rights Abuses going, he's been tortured. Who came out and said Chelsea Manning's been tortured after another UN Special Rapporteur on Torture said she's being tortured. Like there's no accountability for gross violations of international law when you're the empire.
Mm-hmm.
And we're the fucking empire. And part of our empire is the nation state of Israel. And part of our empire is the United Kingdom and Australia and fucking New Zealand and Canada. Like, if you need to sell an international general strike, you probably can, based off of bringing down the fucking American empire, grinding that to a halt, because we're already international. We're already fucking like 30 years, 40 years into globalism. And it's being fucking, the entire goddamn pandemic is being scripted and fucking decided on by these fucking unelected globalists who are loyal to no state whatsoever, no nation whatsoever, loyal to their next dollar, and will fucking stab anyone for it. Casual genocides, active fucking participatory genocides, fucking the war crimes that are sanctions to squeeze out a few more dollars in a fossil fuel market. Like, these people are fucking sociopaths who do not care about us, and we provide their existence.
How do we best address that to the people? I mean, it's more than blatantly obvious. This isn't some, far-flung dark web, type of conspiracy theory in which this has all been laid out. And COVID-19 did more to enhance the disdain that the corporate, the oligarchs, however you want to phrase it, capitalism has had for us peasants than any other situation in the last 20, 25 years. I mean, you thought Iraq was bad, and you thought that was showing that they didn't care about the little guy because mostly it was the poor going to fight rich people's battles. Or if you thought that a situation like 2016 occurring, they don't give a fuck about our voice. They just care about their own bottom line. If there was any opportunity to say, hey, guys, they're not for us at all. They don't care about us. COVID-19 has been that clarion call. It's been a rallying point in which everyone can see with their own 2 eyes or 1 eye or braille, however you want to phrase it, that at the end of the day, they don't care about us. They could care less whether we exist as long as we go to work and produce.
I'm gonna encourage people to view it with your third eye and take a fuck ton of psychedelics while you're here on lockdown, take a vacation without leaving your living room. Go learn something about you. Learn something about the space that you occupy. And fuck, man. I mean, I've said it before, and I'm sure I'm going to have to say it again. But the American political system can best be described as we're Johns, and our elected officials are whores. And like good Johns, we always pay them, and sometimes we try out a new whore, and sometimes, we're feeling a little bit frisky and we go for the whore with the green hair. But they're all whores, and they're all whores who are accountable to their pimp. And their pimp is the national security state, the global intelligence community. They're always going to pay their pimp, and the pimp is always going to get a bigger cut. And until we stop being Johns, we're not going to change anything, because the system is set up for the pimps, and they try to make their whores as comfortable as possible, because if you really piss off your fucking bottom bitch, they might go and squeal on you.
I got about 5 minutes, and I don't know if we can tonight, with all the truth and the facts that exist before us, with all the evidence that is there, if we can, in any other way, any language, any writings. I mean, if you have a style that you could suggest that would get people to wake up to all the obvious and to show them that they have the power to change this. And they don't have to settle for this. You only live one life. I'm an atheist, so I believe after this, it's all said and done. My job is to make this world a little bit better for my daughter, and so on and so forth. If you believe that you can make change, that there's more of us than there are of them, then you need to stand up. Go to your Home Depot, Lowe's, Ace. Don't care where the hardware stores. Go get yourself a fluorescent vest. Start talking to people in your community. Start going online. Start communicating with one another. And let's actually stand up against this current system that just holds us down. We don't matter. All we are is ways to produce. That's it. And once we accept that and say, well, no, I don't agree with you. I'm a little bit more valuable than that. My family, my friends, my community is a little bit more valuable than that. Once you realize that you have the power to do that, the world will change. And it doesn't necessarily require bloodletting. General strike might be just enough to do this.
It's supposed to take 3.5% of the population to move their government to do something. Where I just had a guy on the show yesterday, Caleb Lawrence, who's a fucking market wizard and financial fucking genius, who was talking way over my head half the time. But he said that we're going to be looking at double-digit unemployment by end of May. That's fairly fucking close. If we're looking at double-digit employment, and every summer for the last several summers has been getting hotter and hotter and hotter and hotter, it's a lot of unemployed people who are going to be naturally pissed off because hot weather makes people angry. Like, that's just flat out a fucking fact. If
Right.
it's miserably hot, you're an asshole. I'm an asshole. I'm sorry. I apologize in advance. I'm going to say something mean, you know?
Right.
But I mean, the conditions couldn't be more fucking perfect. Like, whoever's running the simulation apparently fucking like cranked it over to a storybook scenario where now the entire planet is being told they can't leave their houses unless, and all you have to do is take away the fucking unless and don't leave your fucking house and stop the whole goddamn machine.
Well, yeah, I totally agree.
I'm going to go ahead and wrap. Jason, thank you very much, man. This has been two guys screaming at each other, but they're not really mad at each other. I do the same show with Sam Tripoli occasionally. We just scream at each other because that's how we're communicating. But there's no animosity behind it. Tell the good folks where they can find you, man.
At Paramquern on Twitter, and you can find any of my chaos and nonsense writings on Twitter. I've got a back catalog. If you're interested, I've also put up a list of candidates and parties to take a look at for people to explore on their own. And everything that we've said tonight, you could either super agree with both of us, one of us, or super disagree. But the key is to realize at the end of the day that you do have power. And if you address the agency that is in you and get your community to do so, we can make some real change.
Sleepy Josh, do you have any thoughts here? Right. I tweeted out earlier today that I had a much better chance of booking John fucking McAfee for this show than Bernie had making a statement on Julian Assange. And May 5th, at 10 o'clock in the morning, I will be interviewing John McAfee, which will still happen before Bernie makes a statement on Julian Assange. You can find me on the tweeters at Slow News Day Show. I am also streaming on D Live now and Periscope when it works. Looking to move to other platforms as well. Gonna fuck around and get a Minds Pro account for free for a year this weekend. Yeah. Fuck. Love you guys. Thanks for being here. I'm Steve Boykinen. This is Slow News Day. Good luck to us all.